Dr. Thomas, good evening. Welcome to CWS and thank you for indulging me in this impromptu conversation. Dr. Thomas, if you were to have met the late President LFS Bonham when you were a younger man in your teens, what two questions would you ask him? And if you were to meet him today, if he was alive, what two questions will you ask him?
Um, in the YSM movement at the time, the Lodge Number 5 group, where my father actually was a general secretary of that district and group, and also a political teacher at the time. And my meeting of LFS Burnham, which I quite remember quite well. I also remember him actually riding on his horse, coming to my father's home. At one point in time, I think he went to David Rose's home, and then he rode to my father. And I also met him when I was a young scout, part of the Scout Troop 49 at the Police Ivlery's compound. I've met him then. If I had to ask him two questions then, at the time, I would have asked him, what are his expectations of us as individuals coming along? What are his expectations of how we can help him to realize his destiny at the time, which he spoke of one people, one nation, one destiny. I think many of us in the YSM at that time were very enamored by that perspective of feeding, clothing, and housing the nation. Because many of us were actually involved in many of the self-help, because there were lots of self-help groups at the time. Additionally, if I had to ask the LFS Burnham at this present time, two questions, I would have asked him. One, whether or not the idealisms of this present time were what him, together with all of the other founding leaders, had in mind for us as a society. And secondly, I would have asked him, given his experience, what would he teach us in terms of making a difference? Or what would he have done different to create a different society as we have it today? That would be my two questions.
Well said. Dr. Thomas, I am curious. I am curious from the perspective of a young man. Let's take into consideration the youths that might be listening to us tonight. You spoke of having been a member of the Scout and a member of the YSM, Young Socialist Movement. They were both youth movements. They both taught you character development, about service for others. May I ask you, Dr. Thomas, what stood out in terms of principles in the YSM that you might not have learned as a young scout?
I recalled from my short-lived days in the YSM a core principle, and that core principle was self-sufficiency. At that time, I think self-sufficiency emanated from within the various YSM groups, out of the specific groups, and it also transcended into our homes. I think our parents at that time was fully much aware of the importance of making sure that we as human beings, as citizens, are self-sufficient in all different aspects of our lives. Whether they taught us how to cook, whether they taught us how to wash clothing, whether they taught us how to do a little home gardening. I think that was one of the most essential things that stood out for us at this present time. I don't think that this generation at this moment in time, as we grew into this generation, I don't think, and I look around, I don't think that there are many individuals who, really soaked in on that specific benefit. Although I must say that, when I say many, I mean the generation that is coming now at this age, they haven't soaked in on that.
Dr. Thomas, I am moved by that strand you just gave us called self-sufficiency. You are in the process with others of either reweaving or weaving a new fabric called civil society. How, Dr. Thomas, as a weaver, how can you take that strand called self-sufficiency and weave it into this new fabric called civil society? What will you do, sir?
Um, the lessons learned from both my social and professional development, both nationally and internationally, are very profound lessons, as especially those lessons you learn internationally from having the opportunity to visit various countries in the global environment. When we look at our roots, look at our culture here in Guyana, we ask ourselves that we have come into certain achievements as individuals. And how should those achievements translate into our contributions in our humanity to our society, as our foreparents and parents have done for us? I, as an individual, see fit that doing nothing is not an option. It is important for us to be able to, as human beings, to be able to, as we receive a baton from our parents, we must be able to pass on a baton that is much firmer and stronger. I remember my father giving us a charge, 9 of us as children, a charge. He said he has brought the generation 1,000-fold forward, and he expects us to take it 1,000,000-fold forward. I think we have fulfilled the charge on a personal basis, but as a person, a nationalist in this society, I think I have a lot to give to the society. In my efforts in doing so, it is my hope that I will be able to educate the society on how best they can serve in their humanity, how best they can serve each other, how best they can play their role, a role that has been bestowed to them constitutionally, and a role that is expected of them to make sure that they play their part in making this society where we live in a better place, so that we can pass on a better society for those generations that are to come.
Dr. Thomas, there are some who argue that if you tell a man to pull himself up by his bootstrap, you better make sure that he has on boots or the boots has straps. If you tell a man he should fish, you better make sure that he has a rod and line and hook, or you've taught him to fish. Bearing that in mind, there's a school of thought, and you mentioned it earlier, that individually there are many successes among our people throughout the diaspora. However, however, collectively, how do we channel these individual successes? How do we come together? There's this belief that we do not have this collectivism of putting our efforts together in, as you mentioned, a nationalistic way, where we can make a collective contribution that is meaningful to our country.
I want to address your question this way. We have done what is called a feasibility study, the Ghana National Council on Public Policy. And we, from 2003 to 2010, we embarked on this feasibility study, speaking to various persons throughout the various sectors of this country and in the diaspora. What we have learned in that study is that there is a lot of anger existing for many reasons, and the anger stems out of the interplay, the coagulation in which the political system in this country brought to bear on the citizens of this country. I will go to a specific event. In 1992, when President Hoyt dismantled the Ministry of Social Development, National Development Ministry, there were a number of individuals there that benefited from that, from being associated with the party and the ministry, and they never ever went to work in a specific capacity, but they stayed home and there was a paycheck. When that ministry was dismantled, a lot of persons became disgruntled. A lot of then came into a new regime administration. Now, prior to that, individuals felt that in this environment, the way that the political system has misogynized it, they felt that they could not get a good quality of life given the things that were happening. I refer to what happened during that course, and even to present day, I refer to it as what is called forced exile, because individuals left Guyana. They never really wanted to do so, but they wanted a better quality of life. They wanted a better interplay. So in talking to these individuals, they share with you these experiences, which are bitter experiences. And you find that, one of my colleagues referred to this statement as hurt people. And you find that today there are a lot of hurt people, and they are hurting people. So you ask the question, how do we get people together? One of the things that we need to do is that we need to embark on a process of reconciliation and healing to assure the individuals that have been hurt by those processes that took place then, that we are in a new generation with a new outlook and a different perspective. We do not want to, and we will not bear the vestiges of the past or those burdens of the past. And we have to really speak to them to let them understand fully well that we empathize with them. We fully well understand what happened at that present time. And we also have to sort of ask them to help us. It is important for us as human beings to be able to communicate. In this whole new global environment, the whole order of interplay is that we are going to seek resolve, not through aggression or the barrel of a gun, but through dialogue and intercourse, dialogue and discourse. So it's important for us that we must be able to communicate with those hurt people and let them understand that we are at a juncture in our lives when we seek a difference, when we are going after a difference. And we have to show and demonstrate to them how the lessons learned from their past, how they must teach us those lessons, yes, but they must also advise us on what not to do in terms of so that we can move ahead decisively and swiftly in making this difference. I call the process moving into a paradigm shift into a new dispensation of how we are going to experience a better quality of life in this country.
Dr. Thomas, my last question, or coming to a close, I hear so much about Article 13. What can you tell me is Article 13, and why is it important that we pay attention to Article 13?
Earlier today, I was having a conversation. I've met with various groups earlier today, and one individual highlighted an important difference in Article 13. It's Section 2, Article 13 of the Constitution, which specifically speaks to the fact that civil society, or the citizens, must be involved in the way the country is governed and managed. Simply put, that's the simplest way to put it. And the political system must make way for this to take place.
Wonderful.
The 1980 Constitution provides for this, and it's important for us as a people, civil society, which includes you, me, all of us, except the political system. It is time for us to stand up in our stead, give effect to Article 13, and to play our role in the management and decision-making processes of what quality and kind of life that we would like to experience in this cooperative Republic of Guyana.
Dr. Thomas, what is GNCPP, and how did it come into being?
The Guyana National Council on Public Policy, also known simply as GNCPP, is a national policy institute and think tank. It came into being on or around March of 2010, after we had finished conducting a 7-year study from 2003 to 2010. The Guyana National Council on Public Policy, GNCPP, was put into place, and GNCPP has various program departments that mirrors the various sectors of governance in this country. Those various sectors, you know, there are many think tanks around the world dealing with various policies. The intentions of GNCPP, the Guyana National Council on Public Policy, is to advocate and develop and present policies within those various sectors of government to assist with better management and a better way of how the country will be governed and managed. The Guyana National Council on Policy will serve as the support mechanism for the newly to be formed Guyana Civil Society Council. We will assist the council in formulating various policies. We have, at this moment in time, as our manifesto, the already prepared, also, although it has to be updated somewhat, is the National Development Strategy, which is a document that reads in of itself for civil society, by civil society. And we will be following that as part of the policy in terms of developing the policy for development of this country.
Dr. Thomas, in your journey to bring this about, to make this into a reality, what surprised you most about yourself?
You know, my sojourn to this point in time is one that keeps surprising me because, you know, sometimes you don't know that you have within you the sort of capacity that is needed to institute or execute the processes that are needed in this situation at this moment in time. I think I give a lot to my quiet moments as I reflect in my faith and the idealisms that come to bear also from the lessons that I have learned in my professional development. And, you know, those lessons, I think that I am putting them to use very well because of the number of individuals whom are clamoring to hear more of this new idealism, this new way forward. And what it is surprising to me is that when I attempted to do this years ago, I can also echo the words of Janet Jagan, Desmond Hoyt, and others who say the idealisms that I come to bear at this present time, the country ain't ready for the yet. But don't be despair, don't lose hope, the time is coming that you can bring it to bear. And that was those little instructions, I should call them, are some things that also encourages me that sometimes life is purposed and maybe the time is right also for which the purpose of these idealisms which I come to bear are right in time.
And last but not least, at what point did you realize that your desire, your willingness, your confidence in your ability were in aligned with your purpose, with this purpose?
You know, as a young man, I would go to a lot of various political meetings with my father, and I became very enamored by his presentations in his teachings to the various party groups. And the things that I learned about the human conditions is something that I always pay close attention to, that I became more observant of the various human conditions. And it has always stuck with me that, you know, there are always solutions to do different, to be different, and to realize different. I think my life has been one in which I always aspire to do different, to be different, and to realize different. And I think I have done so and done it well. I don't like to wear the acronyms on my sleeve because what I do is not about me.
Right.
It's bigger than me, and it's about the whole world, the whole society. And it's my hope that as I marshal this process along, that I will continue getting more and more support so that we can see a realization where we can see this country become truly one people, one nation, with one destiny.
And now that you said one people, one nation, one destiny, and I think of oneness. If I may use this metaphor to describe you, and this is from my perspective, sir, I am pleased to hear you say this is not about you. It's about what you can do. I think of a lamp, a single light, and it is not about the lamp, but about its glow and its illumination. So I thank you for that. I think of you as this lamp and the light that you shine, and I want to say to you, sir, continue shining. Our country needs you and more like you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins.
Don't get off yet. Yeah, go ahead.
Be blessed, be good, be safe, and thank you to the listening audience.
You